Okay, I'm going to take one more question from our Russian friends and then proceed to ask some questions that came from the U.S. The questioner says, Mr. LaRouche, as I'm sure you're aware, Prime Minister Putin recently took the occasion of the celebration of cosmonaut Gagarin's space travel to make some remarks that we felt were very important. Number one is that he did directly address the recent events in Japan and pointed out that that it was his understanding that there were certain precursor signs of the earthquake, and that it was his hope that we could gain a better understanding of how this occurs. He went on to say that there was no question that there was a very strong connection between our ability to both interpret and collect this data and the furtherance of the space program. He said that there was a lot that we knew, but also a lot that we have yet to know, and that it was really for this reason that he has fought so hard for rebuilding the Russian space program. And in fact, he has done that. As I think you know, over the past 5 years, Russia has increased its spending on the space program by almost 50%. And in this fiscal year, we will spend approximately $7 billion. We hope to increase that as we go on. But it was also the case that one of the things that Mr. Putin proposed was international cooperation, both on the space station program, on satellite search and rescue, and on several other critical issues, including the study of the moon, Mars, and of the galaxy. And he had expressed at that time that he was excited that the head of your NASA program would soon arrive in Moscow, and this cooperation proposal would be put on the table. In fact, the NASA head did visit us, and the offer was made for this level of cooperation. He was very gracious and said that certainly the United States agreed in principle, but that he had to be candid and report to us that the budget for long-term planning of space exploration on the part of the United States had been largely abandoned, and that because of that, he could not really make a commitment to accept the offer. We were very dismayed by this, and we have really two questions for you. First of all, do you think that this policy will persist? Also, our question is, do you think that Russia's pursuit of these questions by itself, without cooperation from the United States and Europe, is actually sufficient to make the kind of breakthroughs in space exploration that's necessary for our planet?
Well, all answers to such questions must have a prelude to the answer. That is, as of this week, the life expectancy of the United States as a nation is much in doubt. Because if this, that is now, remember, what's happening to the world, especially the transatlantic community, with the crisis in Europe, the crisis in continental Europe in particular, and the crisis in the United States, which are very closely related. What is happening is we are now in a period of accelerating hyperinflationary explosion. we're now in this transatlantic region, and in Brazil, we're now under the influence of an accelerating rate of hyperinflation comparable to what happened to Germany in 1923 during the months of September through October. Germany at that time was confined, that the attack on Germany, the hyperinflation, was confined to Germany because that was a British measure at that time. But what is happening on a more complex scale in the transatlantic region is something, the same disease, but with somewhat different predicates added to it and preconditions. So therefore, you're not talking about a United States policy over any long term. There is no basis right now in terms of existing U.S. policy trends and political leaders for any long life expectancy of the United States. It's about to get the treatment, the 1923 treatment, but good. Not only that, the same thing is true of continental Europe. All of continental Europe is in the same mess. Brazil will go through an explosion, a different type, but the same thing. The BRIC is a bad bank by British descendants. Now, the British are in this mission crazy. They're absolutely crazy because you have a species which has certain built-in appetites and behavior. The question is, can the British survive themselves? Because their behavior, their innate behavior, under this monarchy and previous monarchies so far, is such that the British system is not one that's capable of surviving. But, in keeping with the tradition of the British Empire, and the Roman Empire before that, and the Byzantine Empire after that, and the Crusader system after that, this empire is not intrinsically viable, even though it has dominated the transatlantic culture for as long as it has. So therefore, there's not much likelihood that the United States is going to be around much longer, nor the British system, at present, unless somebody changes their ways very radically and very quickly. Because you're now in the effect of what happened in Germany in 1923 is now a transatlantic phenomenon. And it is that not in some future time. It's that this week. That doesn't mean it's going to come down this week, but it means that the conditions for its coming down have been established this week, since the weekend. How long it will take? When it will crash? Don't know. Too many variables. But forecasting, at the present time, you're on a short fuse, a short leash. If you don't act soon, I don't know how soon, but if you don't act soon, the game is finished. The United States is gone, and after that, the British will be gone. And practically all of Europe, too. You're at that point now. Now, on the Russian side of this thing, the Russian space program is crucial, and the revival of NASA, as is former policy, it's pre-Obama policy, it's pre-Bush policy, must be restored, because NASA is more than just an idea. It's just more than a something we can do idea. NASA is absolutely indispensable for us in dealing, or in a key part, in dealing with the wave of earthquakes and similar phenomena, which are going to be the case, as far as we know now, for the coming years. We're headed into a period of years of look, the storms you're getting, like the increase of the number of tornadoes, which were experienced last week on this coast of the United States. This is going to increase. Just think about tornadoes. Look at what you can see on the website of the Weather Service. what you can see these tornadoes did, and didn't look at the data on what is the concentration of these tornadoes and their magnitude, and what's the forecast for more, including today, in this vicinity. Or a little closer to the Alleghenies than here, than this spot here. So you're now in a situation where you got to stop the nonsense. You don't have, it's not political options. It's reality options. You have to respond to the reality of the universe, Earth as it lives in the universe. And the United States is part of the Earth and part of these ongoing processes. You have this guy Geller, one of the dirtiest liars of any influence around, who, with this crazy president, who was a stupid jerk at his best. That's the kindest thing you can say about him. Other things, that you're bad from there on, all the way down. These guys lie and say these are not forecastable. They're intrinsically forecastable. The question is, how many factors have you prepared to take on in order to get the combination of cross factors which will give you a better indication of when the damn thing's going to blow? We can identify, for the greatest degree, most of the places in which these volcanoes and similar earthquakes are going to occur. And they're the same thing. A volcano and an earthquake are part of the same thing. You can't separate them into two categories. Some do. Anybody who separates as a scientist a volcano from an earthquake categorically is an idiot who should be thrown out of office. He's an incompetent, but not only an incompetent, a dangerous one. Because he's going to get people killed, like the pilot who doesn't know how to fly a plane. They shouldn't be trusted, and they're corrupt. We have a bunch, we've been putting into office, in key governmental and related offices, people who are considered experts who are controlling some of these policies of the United States government, and they are either liars, prostitutes, or worse. The kindest thing you can suspect of them is stupidity. They're evil. This guy Geller is absolutely evil. He's a known liar. He's a pervert. He's a British asset. He's the enemy of the United States, and he's a key influence in U.S. policy today on this area. This is our key problem. We're now in a position where the detonation of a worldwide chain reaction collapse is in process. We must act soon. We cannot delay this. People are not ready for this decision. People are ready to die a horrible death, see their families chopped up around them in terms of what's going on with major earthquakes. They're prepared to take responsibility for doing nothing to move people to safety, where there's no Corps of Engineers functioning to do the function that would be required to move people. The same kind of thing that George III or George W. Bush Jr. did in the case of the Mississippi, the New Orleans crisis. They did nothing, and they deliberately did nothing. In Haiti, this president did nothing. He condemned the people of Haiti to death by his choice. We had the capability to do the right thing. He prevented it from being considered. He's a murderer. His only escape from the charge of murder is stupidity, of imbecility, or moral imbecility. So this is what we have to deal with. We're now in a situation where we absolutely require NASA as a part of the arsenal of space or operations arsenal to do two things. What about earthquakes on the moon? What do we know about earthquakes on the moon? What do we know about earthquakes on Mars? We're part in the solar system, buddy. This is not a bunch of flying junk around there. This is a solar system. And what happens in one part of the solar system is a part of the solar system, which means it's part of the whole solar system. We have to do with this work. We cannot do it without the facilities represented by NASA. We have to reactivate NASA as a frontline institution. You want to organize all these systems that we have to do, supervisory systems? NASA is the proper place in which to locate the central pivot of a whole network of governmental and related systems which are in cooperation. And NASA is the relevant center for that. Reactivate NASA immediately. Let's get to work on this thing. We don't have the number of... This presidency is shutting down instruments we need for forecasting earthquakes. This president has said on his own voice, publicly on television, that we're not going to spend anything on trying to prevent these things. He has said, like a liar he is, or a degenerate he is, he said these things are not forecastable. He's a liar. Of course, he's an incompetent as well, so that helps, I suppose. It's composite. All right. So therefore, this cooperation of the United States and Russia in particular on this area of space-related investigations extended into the question of earthquake areas and other areas which are part of the same system. You can't separate them. We're in the solar system. The solar system is a part of the galaxy. To understand this process, we have to explore the phenomena, the history of these parts of the universe, in order to bring to bear enough foresight to have a more precise indication not only of what is going to happen to us, but what we could do about it. And what we could do about it is a much bigger question than what might happen to us, obviously. So, in that case, now this extends to other things. Apart from being a protective agency, this kind of space work is also very important for economy. Because you may observe that China has a limited amount of resources relative to its population. If China is going to have a successful development of its population to come to true self-sufficiency, balance of self-sufficiency, it's going to require a lot of mineral materials. Now, the nearest source, the richest source of available new sources of materials lie in Siberia. Siberia, as you may know, is part of Russia. It's not only part of Russia politically and geographically, it's also a very special part of the whole planet, and especially the whole geography of this area. And it close to the Arctic. Now, the Arctic is very important to us because the Arctic is an area which is near the North Pole. Now, the North Pole is the most critical area, strategically, of the planet Earth, and it is one of the less explored. Scientific exploration of the North Pole is very important. My friends in Russia, who are now kind of rather aged, like as I am, are experts in this area. So the development of the mineral resources of Siberia, the development of Siberia for this purpose, the question of the space exploration, the question of the investigation of what's going on with the North Pole around there, all these things are a common area of issues which are of global interest. So Russia's role in Siberia in particular, and in its areas around Siberia, or dependent upon Siberia, is a crucial part of the interest of the nations of the world, especially the cooperation between the United States and Russia. So there's a manifold issue here. This is an overriding question, an overriding issue, and therefore it has to be approached from that standpoint. What we need is a positive policy, and Russia's role in the space program is crucial in this. We need this as a common policy of the United States and Russia, together with other adjoining countries. And that's the way it has to be approached. And we have to take the same attitude of a platform approach that I've indicated earlier today for this case as we would for those cases I referred to earlier. So it's really a systemic requirement that this cooperation proceed. and that the role of NASA and related things be involved.